song years and years ago now that I was going to be talking about the whole COVID era here and just giving grace to everybody, right? Graceland, that's the year of COVID. We aren't giving grace to each other this year. Something's the matter. But good to be here with you again, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And this is our last session of this series. So a lot of familiar faces, a lot of you hear all the sessions and, most of the sessions sort of thing, or a lot of them. So just thanks for hanging in there. And looking forward to a good opportunity for you yourself today around our session 8 here around self-awareness and positive self-talk. And then if it works for you, again, something maybe you can share with others to be helpful, and let self-care lead to community care. So with that, let's get underway. Happy May, everybody. And just a quick reminder again, you are well. People come to you because they thirst for so many things. You feel it now that it's May, my goodness, right? And it never winds down. It ramps up till the end of the school year, right? So, they thirst. There's so many things. Remember, friends, we need to replenish the well before the well goes dry. Again, that's why I love seeing so many familiar folks here. You're, again, getting in the disciplines of self-care and compassion resilience. And that's huge because, again, working with the same metaphor, I purposely start with this every time so we get this deeply ingrained, because we have not been taught to think about our sustainability in important ways. And so they have to have the vocabulary that's going to fit the new times to better navigate the complexities of the current leadership journey, right? So again, compassion, resilience, we have to know it, we have to think about it, we have to build disciplines around this, because what it is the reservoir of well-being. And we can use it on the hardest of days, and we have them, right? But then we can get through and sustain this good work. And again, if you prefer, or I hope, because so many of you have been here throughout the sessions, that you're able to actually, you can see it, you can feel it, you're aware of this ability of being able to bounce back, because life's gonna be hard, it's gonna be up and down, it's never linear, but you can bounce back because of some of these tools, hopefully stronger, wiser, more personally powerful. And that's certainly the case with our topic today, which again is self-awareness and positive self-talk. So they're connected. I'm purposely trying to connect these two and make a point with you today. And you'll see it in the segment design. We're going to talk first about as you would expect, self-awareness is listed first. That's what we're going to start with, almost like a mindfulness synonym, right? So we're going to talk about what does it actually mean to be self-aware? And there's kind of a misunderstanding about it. I think is a powerful one. When I learned it, I'd like to share it with you today, and how that connects to the second part about positive self-talk. And again, if it's helpful for you today, you can think about how you can create conditions for other people to get the thoughts of this that can be powerful for them as well. So I'm going to start with a clip from, in fact, 2 clips from this TED Talk. If you haven't seen it before, like a few minutes to start, we'll get you thinking about the 3 questions that you see in the red text box. And then we'll think about that and we'll apply one other segment. So as you start, because we're talking about self-awareness, first off, just what is self-awareness? What are some of its benefits? That might not be so hard. Why you see the third one in bold is because that's what I really want you to think about here. So have the answer to that. View for this purpose the next 3 minutes for any of those 3 questions, but particularly the third one. All right. So let's get into this. And again, welcome for being here. Happy to learn with you today again.
Self-awareness. But first things first, what is this thing we call self-awareness anyway? It's the ability to see ourselves clearly, to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. Self-awareness gives us power. We might not always like what we see, but there's a comfort in knowing ourselves. And there's actually a ton of research showing that people who are self-aware are more fulfilled. They have stronger relationships. They're more creative. They're more confident and better communicators. They're less likely to lie, cheat, and steal. They perform better at work and are more promotable. And they're more effective leaders with more profitable companies. In the world of self-awareness, there are 2 types of people. Those who think they're self-aware, and those who actually are. It's true. My team has found that 95% of people think they're self-aware, but the real number is closer to 10 to 15%. You know what this means, don't you? It means that on a good day, on a good day, 80% of us are lying to ourselves about whether we're lying to ourselves. Pretty scary, right? So you can imagine the challenge we had in figuring out who was truly self-aware. What do you think would have happened if I had said, hey, how self-aware are you? Exactly. So to be part of our research, our unicorns had to clear 4 hurdles. They had to believe they were self-aware, as measured by an assessment my team developed and validated. Using that same assessment, someone who knew them well had to agree. They had to believe that they'd increase their self-awareness in their life, and the person rating them had to agree. We found 50 people out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds who met our criteria. They were professionals, entrepreneurs, artists, students, stay-at-home parents. And we didn't find any patterns by industry, age, gender, or any other demographic characteristic. These unicorns helped my team discover a most surprising truth. That approach you're using to examine your thoughts, your feelings, and your motives, introspection, well, you're probably doing it, there's no easy way to say this, you're probably doing it totally wrong.
Oh, that cliffhanger. Okay, so what's going on here a little bit? So first off, this idea of self-awareness, right? What does that mean? Why is that important to leaders? I mean, it's really important, right? It's the ability to see ourselves clearly and understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. She started that with the segment, right? So as a leader, pretty darn important to have a sense of awareness of self, not just for ourselves, but for the others we serve and how we fit, right? Like what are we doing that's a fit to the context? Because leadership is about choosing the right piece of self, oftentimes for the context that one's in, and finding that right fit and maximizing it. So that piece, there's many benefits, but I guess I just want to the mic's open. I want to get to that bottom question here. What was surprising about this research? What did you hear that was maybe not what you would have thought?
I think it's interesting to hear how many people think they're self-aware and then what the research is that truly are. One of the questions I had about that was, when you do like staff perception surveys or employee engagement surveys, do you feel like that helps with this to become more self-aware?
Well, that's right. So I think where we're going to go next with this, Jerem, is it's really about what you do with the information you have, as much as it is about getting the information, because you want to get the information. And I think, and she's saying that we're doing, if you caught that last part, and I've had the benefit now of seeing this a few times, so start settling in. But she said the thing is that the way we're doing this, our introspection about it, isn't serving us well. We're doing it wrong, that introspection. So what does that mean? And she also heard a little bit of a hint in here, and we'll go into that next, this idea of what she calls who are unicorns. She said the self-awareness unicorns, because most people aren't. That means the people that are, if you've heard that term, right, before, like the unicorns are the rare ones you see. In this case, it's the 10 to 15% who are self-aware. And if you caught it, she also said what they found was there's nothing really in common about them other than how they thought. So that means, and you'll see later, she's going to make the point, it isn't like you're a man or a woman, or you're from this race, or you're this intelligence level, or it was what they did is and to your very point there, Jerem, it's like how they responded to the information differently is the key part. And that's what we want to listen for closely here. Because if I was going to think about this, when I first saw this, I go, wow, this is really powerful, because particularly for leaders, we better have a pretty good sense of self-awareness, right? I think that's really important, because in that there's mindfulness, there's a sense of how you move forward and learn from your situations. So thanks for that. Anything else from any of this first segment before we get into the next one? It's going to set you up. Just comment or question. Okay, so with that, let's find out a little bit more about how these unicorns, what they do differently, and how that might serve us in our work around self-awareness.
But don't worry, I am not here today to tell you to stop thinking about yourselves. I am here to tell you to start doing it just a little bit differently. So if we shouldn't ask why, then what should we ask? Do you remember our self-awareness unicorns? When we looked at how they approached introspection, we found the answer. We analyzed literally hundreds of pages of transcripts, and we saw a very clear pattern. Although the word why appeared less than 150 times, the word what appeared more than 1,000 times. Let me give you a few examples. Nathan, a brand manager, got a terrible performance review from his new boss. Instead of asking, why are we like oil and water? He asked, what can I do to show her I'm the best person for this job? It changed everything. People now point to Nathan and his boss as proof that polar opposites can work together. Sarah, an education leader, was diagnosed with breast cancer in her late 40s. And when she asked, why me? She said it felt like a death sentence. So then she asked, what's most important to me? This helped her define what she wanted her life to look like in whatever time she had left. She's now cancer-free and more focused on the relationships that mean the most to her. Jose, an entertainment industry veteran, hated his job. And instead of getting stuck what most of us would do and ask, why do I feel so terrible? He asked, what are the situations that make me feel terrible, and what do they have in common? He quickly realized that he would never be happy in his job, and it gave him the courage to pursue a new and far more fulfilling career path as a wealth manager. So these are just 3 examples of dozens of unicorns that asked what instead of why. Do I have any Nathans or Sarahs or Jose's in the room? I'll add one more, Tasha. So earlier this year, I published a book about all of this, which I am so proud of. But one day, for some unknown reason, I did what every author is never supposed to do. I read my Amazon reviews. And you guys, it was devastating. I asked, why are people being so mean to me about a book that I spent thousands of hours researching and wrote to make their lives better, right?
Just saying for a second here, isn't Amazon reviews a little bit like reading 360-degree performance feedback? Okay, I'm gonna go back in, right? We have to read it, we don't want to read it. Oh my gosh, here we go.
I fell into a spiral of self-loathing. It was honestly one of the low points of my life. A couple of weeks went by, and it dawned on me that maybe I should take my own advice. So I tried a different question. I asked, what about all those people who were telling me that my book has helped them change their lives? Oh, what a different outcome. So no, I wasn't doing it right either. This is not an easy world, is it? Not at all. She knows. We all know. But I have seen so much evidence that self-awareness gives us a much better shot at finding happiness and success in this crazy world. To start, we just need to change one simple word. Change why to what. Why questions trap us in that rearview mirror. What questions move us forward to our future? As human beings, we are blessed with the ability to understand who we are, what we want to contribute, and the kind of life we want to lead. Remember, our self-awareness unicorns had nothing in common, except a belief in the importance of self-awareness and a daily commitment to developing it. That means we can all be unicorns. The search for self-awareness never, ever stops. Life goes on. It's up to us to choose to learn and grow from our mistakes and our tragedies and our successes. One of the best quotes I've ever heard on this subject is from Rumi. He said, "Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I'm wise, so I'm changing myself." Thank you very much.
Love that quote. So, did that resonate with you at all? Yesterday I was clever, so I thought I'd change the world. Today I'm wise, so I think I'll change myself. Starts with self always. Anyway, we've learned that, I hope, if nothing, through this series. So if you caught the point here is why, when you're talking about self-awareness, not why, but what. Did you catch the big point from a research? Why traps us in what?
Was it the self-loathing that you mentioned?
There's definitely that. She was saying like it traps us in the past, thinking about the why, like when you get those results. Like I think the best, like I wasn't trying to be snarky. I mean, I've lived through all that too. I still do, right? You get the performance review stuff, you get the 360-degree feedback. It's it's I have to do you have to do this? I have to kind of gear myself up to look at it, and because I know I'm gonna find things that are disheartening, even though you put your heart and soul into all it. So you do that. And she said, so again, we want to be aware. It's just how you react to it. Like she said, don't get, why, right? And she talks about herself, like I can get caught up in my own, like, why would they say that? I mean, do they understand what I'm trying to do here? And the problem with why on when you get into self-awareness opportunities, it gets you trapped in the rearview mirror in the past. And the what actually helps you move forward. And that's the point of this. And that was again the unicorns, the thing they did differently, right? And the only thing they had in common to be really highly self-aware and to meet those criteria she set up in her research was to actually, they thought differently. They thought about when they got the disconcerting data. I think about that cognitive dissonance, right? What I think and what I'm getting is data. They just deal differently with it. So if I just, because there's a lot there, like I'll just tell you again, because I want to get you in an exercise for yourself here in a minute, but just these were four of the things that she said how they thought differently. So there was the person who was getting feedback from the boss that maybe you're not the right person. And so instead of thinking, why does that person hate me? Instead, this unicorn said, what could I do to show him or her, my boss, that I'm the right person for this job? So it was about a what thing rather than a why. Then there was the person, the education leader, who found out she had cancer, and rather than say why me, she said instead, what are the things most important to me? And then living and acting in that accord from that point forward for how much time she had. Another situation, what are the so the person who's feeling like my job sucks, it's not a fit, whatever, instead of like, why is this job stink so much or whatever, what are the situations where I tend to feel terrible, and what do those have in common, so you can better understand action forward, those sorts of things. So with that in mind, friends, I'd like you to think about an application for yourself for the next few minutes. So remember, self-awareness, let's come back to the definition. It's the ability to see ourselves clearly and to understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. And so I'd like you to think about, because I'm sure we all have something, we all have something like this. What's a current situation causing you challenge or hardship? And so what's a why question you have pondered on this? That's going to get you stuck in the rearview mirror. Maybe it's something you're perseverating on even now, coming into the meeting today. More importantly, the last thing, what's a what question you could form to help you move forward more productively? So I want to give you, a few minutes, about 3 minutes or so, just to kind of play around with those. We'll just sit quietly, and then I'll invite you back in a few minutes and see if anything's coming forward for you on this. But again, get to the what instead of the why if you can, please. I'm wondering if I could have a person willing just to kind of share like the why question and a what question shift on this. Someone willing to share that just because I think it helps with the application example.
I'd be willing to share.
Thanks, Andrew.
Do you want my school one or personal life one? Because I got
whichever one you feel most comfortable sharing.
I'll do my funny personal one at the end because it'll be quick, but we're in scheduling season. So I'm an assistant principal in Superior. So my why question has been a lot of like, why aren't teachers thinking about like big picture when we're trying to allocate like staffing assignments, and tough conversations and a lot of tears and angry emails over the past week. I'm seeing heads nodding from a few other people. So I was thinking more of the what question is just like what specific groups should we be talking to more as a team and like kind of mapping out our whole building and what's going on and how like FTEs impact everybody along with our students' needs.
Mm-hmm.
My personal one is my son is getting the trifecta on Thursday of tonsils out. He's almost 3 tonsils, tubes, and adenoids. And Essentia in Duluth just called and told me I can't eat or drink for the whole time I'm in his room overnight. So I said, so I can't eat or drink for 14 hours. And they said, yeah. And I was like, oh. So my why question is, why do I have to do that? And my what question will be, how do I smuggle in high protein snacks in my suitcase? So that just happened in the last hour. So I'm still processing now.
It is funny.
Yeah.
It's funny. You know, through both of your examples, though, you can see there's an action orientation to your shift for both that doesn't get you perseverating on kind of self-loathing, self-pity, you know, just this sense that, you know, there's something constructive about the way you shifted, even, you know, even that second one, that was funny. It's an important shift. And I see in the chat here, just one popped in too. So let me just see here quick. Yeah. How many how many of you were able to try it out? I mean, just for time, I just kind of, was it able to, you know, you can apply, have an application for this, I hope. You know, one of the things, just for time, just because I want to get you to one other thing quick is really, if you think about what these things are, because remember, this is the definition of self-awareness. It occurs to me that they're all about our identity. And it's an important thing if you understand how you know, again, that closing comment you said, so I used to be clever, so I want to change the world. Now I'm trying to get wise and I'm changing myself. One of the most transformative things we can do is again, pursue an aspirational identity for ourselves or something more collective. It's actually one of the most transformative things. And it goes in the idea of how humans develop and how leaders develop. And it's a kind of an ethos that we try to share a lot in what we do, particularly like our Bell Academy and others, is that you actually, through the crucible of trials, crucible of the experiences you have, you become a better version of who you are through what you do and the commitments you make. Like the things you just heard, Andrea just said, like making a commitment to do maybe communication differently rather than perseverate on the why. And just like, okay, it's just going to suck every time we do master planning. Instead thinking, no, okay, I'm becoming aware of what's going on here. And I have, instead of perseverating on the why, I can actually make some commitments around communication in that case, with particularly thoughtful, you know, learning from my experiences today to actually have a different experience and maybe help them have a different experience. So, you know, as a couple people have said here, I think really relevant to what we're talking about, this Norman McLean, the problem of self-identity is not just a problem for the young, it's a problem all the time, perhaps the problem. It should haunt old age. And when it does no longer, it should tell you that you are dead. No, that is a really like, wow, that's a quote in your face. I don't know about the haunting old age part, but I still think that's so true. And this whole part of self-awareness, it means like your becoming is continuing to be a process. And as this other quote here says too from Margaret Farley, you know, the story of the human race, as well as the story of anyone's life, might be told in terms of commitments. You know, I'm committed to trying to do proactive things based on my experiences, not to perseverate on the rearview mirror. And if I can do that, that puts me in a special group of people who can be really aware and really growing through each of these things. So I hope as you come back, I guess I think just one of the great dispositions to have. And if you do any kind of meditation or mindfulness, you learn this. So this is another kind of aspect into that is, when things are troubling you, one of the moves you make in mindfulness is to be curious about that rather than be resentful about it or perseverating on the cycle, those mental loops again that just get you stung on the why or stuck on the why. So again, I think the big takeaway from this today that I've gotten, and I'd like to share with you, hopefully you're making some sense, is all these trials we've been going through this year, and without being Pollyannish about it, just to be kind of like, okay, I want to be proactive and productive about this, is to think about how those trials help you better understand who you are, become a little more self-aware, be maybe a little more self-aware of how others see you and how you can fit into the world, that identity piece again. And then because the identity development never ends, nor should it, then it really helps us to continue to be through this all, hopefully a more self-aware, a more mindful, a more impactful and peaceful leader, even though, the trials are going to come and go. Because, you can actually you can't control it all, but you can control your response. And the response, again, the critical practical thing is when you're thinking about self-awareness and dealing with feedback loops and like that, think about, in this case, what, not why. And that's counterintuitive, right? Because everything like start with why, but we're not talking about like an instructional improvement effort now. We're talking about a self-awareness situation. In this case, it's what, because what gets you going forward and why gets you stuck in the rearview mirror in the past. All right. So I hope that's helpful. And with the time we have, I want to make the transition now from self-awareness into the other piece of this, which is positive self-talk. And remember, compassion resilience, a lot of this is about our ability to remain optimistic amidst an imperfect world. So throughout this whole series, we've been trying to equip you with things, in this case, be curious, not resentful. Think about what you could do about it rather than being stuck in the why you're getting that sort of feedback, that sort of thing. And so here's another way to, so now we connect it into some of the kind of the self-talk, the positive self-talk that happens, and maybe it doesn't happen, and some things you can do about it. So I want to just start with this for 2 or 3 minutes. So here's be a quick little exercise for the next 8 minutes or so. So just take the next 2 or 3 minutes, friends, to write about something that you did that you feel bad about, or which you have judged yourself about. For example, you snapped at a student and afterward felt ashamed. Be honest about your feelings. And by the way, this little activity is from the Onward workbook of Elena Aguilar. So great stuff there. This is one little piece. So just please take 2 to 3 minutes and just jot down part 1. Give yourself a little activity here to grow today. Okay, so here's the next part, please. Now, just you don't have to write anything, but just imagine a fantasy friend who is unconditionally loving, accepting, kind, and compassionate. This friend sees all your strengths and weaknesses and loves and accepts you just as you are with all your human imperfections. Take just a moment to close your eyes and imagine being in the presence of this kind and forgiving friend. We'll take a moment for this, maybe 30 seconds. Okay, so now here's part 3. With that fantasy friend in mind, that unconditionally loving, accepting, kind, and compassionate person. In a half sheet of paper or less, or on your device, write a journal entry from the perspective of your friend about part 1. How does your friend view your actions from his or her perspective of unlimited compassion? How does your friend convey his or her compassion for the pain you feel when you judge yourself harshly? If you think your friend would suggest changes you might make, how would these suggestions embody feelings of unconditional compassion? So we're going to take about 4 minutes for this one. Right from the perspective of this unconditionally loving, kind, and compassionate friend.
Joe, just to clarify, the perspective of the unconditional friend based on what we wrote about in part 1?
Exactly. They're trying to counsel you and just give you another, speak to you in a kind way about what you're struggling. Thank you for the clarifying question, Tara. Come back in about 30 seconds. Now, here's what I'd like you to do tomorrow, later to this evening, whenever you can, is do part 4. But I'm just going to tell you what it'll be. Part 4 is that you writing that journal entry from the compassionate friend, put it down for a while, but come back to it after a few hours again, or a few days, and read it again and let the words really sink in this time. You might even read it aloud. You feel the compassion pouring into you. Notice that compassion doesn't preclude change and understanding. You can resolve to behave better and also taking compassion. That's the equanimity of meditation, right? I mean, if you're familiar with that word, it's basically like it's a yes and. Yes, I can be compassionate to myself as I also try to behave better in the future. It isn't like if you do one, you are contradicting or precluding the change that you want in yourself around whatever situation makes you feel bad. So what should come out of this, if you actually apply this process, come back to that, read part 3 again later tonight, tomorrow, maybe in a few days, and then you can ask yourselves these questions here. What did it feel like to do this exercise, and what did you learn about yourself? I'm just kind of curious here if I could just ask you, we would try that later, even as a sense of just going through parts of the exercise so far. Again, the questions were really about what did it feel like to do this exercise, or what did you learn about yourself? I'm just curious in the last few minutes, any things to share with the group?
I can share, Joe. So I think that that first step and we had to pick something that we weren't so proud of for the way that we behaved, I think to already kind of give that space is recognizing that like that kind of feels icky. And then to look at it from somebody who is like very compassionate, and likely we're harder on ourselves than maybe the person on the receiving end. But also to look through, like, if you have the lens of being compassionate, how will you pay that forward in the way that you treat others, instead of getting to that point where you probably landed in the first example.
Yeah.
It made me really think of a good friend of mine I feel fortunate to have, who works in a different field and many hours away, but his head face jumped into my head. And so when I was writing about it, I was writing about it from the lens of how we've had a relationship for a long time. And I think he'd probably ask me, what do I think I would have done differently, right? Instead of giving me advice, he probably would ask me something like that, and then would encourage me to follow through on that because he knows it would make me feel better. So that's kind of interesting because I've been stuck on something since Friday night. I think now I'm going to be able to move forward a little bit if I take those steps.
Yeah, great. Glad to hear that. Anyone else? Just if there's another moment here, if anyone has anything else, just is there space?
Yeah, I can share. I think one of the things that struck me was, this thing that I was not proud of. I think my friend would have shared with me that sometimes our reactions are a compilation of everything else that's going on, and it's not just about that one event. And allowing me the space to look at what are the other things that were happening that contributed to the reaction that I had. And having that kind of self-awareness helps too, because it's what's going on at home, and it's what's going on here, and it's what this other person told me before that happened. And so my reaction was probably a little bit out of whack just because of everything else that I wasn't taking care of.
Yeah.
Emotionally and mentally before that. I probably would not have responded in the same way had I maybe settled in and taken care of some of those other things. So
I mean, a lot of this is thanks, Jean. And, a lot of this is really about just, again, grace. If you were here at the start today, I was playing Graceland by, well, anyway, you know the song. And I just said, this is a year for grace, of all things. And, we've talked today about, again, if you're self-aware and when you're in this problem of like struggle here a little bit, like there's just so many things. Life's hard and we work through things personally, professionally. And, Andrea did a great example here of, usually any moment we have both parts of our lives like that, professionally, personally, we have something, where it's a challenge, it's a struggle, what have you. And we can get stuck again on that why part. And so part of this is the what, and all of you were just talking really about just this process itself, just a simple little self-compassion step is what you can do. Like what, so instead of getting stuck on why, you could just kind of maybe this is a tool you could use in the future again. Maybe you can, share it with someone else who seems stuck in a moment or a situation. And, a lot of this is about, again, we can't change the world unless we change ourselves. And I think if we are kind of stuck in loops of self-loathing and perseverating and such without means to kind of just address it, let ourselves that idea of equanimity, like I said here, you get in mindfulness, it's about, just because you're showing compassion doesn't mean you are waving off the need to improve around those kinds of situations and learn from it. But just having that space of being compassionate of self creates space for you to be compassionate with others. It's really a ceiling, it seems like, in my own experiences. And I think from what I'm learning from my own journey around mindfulness and some of these efforts around compassion, resilience, and like a lot of you, I mean, I didn't get trained these things before. I'm trying to learn with you, and I hope you're seeing that throughout this whole series. I'm just trying to share along with you things that I'm learning. I know some of you have told me you've shared some of this with some of your folks as you're learning it. Maybe it's helpful. Maybe you see a situation in mass or in individuals. But again, all that is just wonderful. We're putting positions here to hopefully help not just others and liberate some of those gifts in us, but with others as well. And I hope you throughout the year kind of gain some of those. So this is the last session, including the one we did at the start of the year. If you're with us we had a few multiple opportunities right when the school year was starting in August and September, which gave us the thought that people might appreciate this. We've gone through really a total of 9 sessions through the year. If there's anything in particular that you ever want to catch back on again, I hope that it is, available through our website. And this is where you want to go, the information resources tab. The drop down has then our ASA webinar information, and pretty much then it's chronological from top to bottom, the most recent. And it isn't just the self-care webinar series. Of course, it's other webinars, but you can find what you need. And if not, of course, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to, get you connected. Happy to give you a listening ear if something's going on. Again, I'm not any expert on this, but I know I'm interested in taking care of myself because I know self-care leads to community care. And if I can make the garden healthy, it's going to be fruitful. And so I'm just really excited and thankful for the opportunity that, if whoever could show up for these would take something away, I hope. And I hope that's you. And I hope that I get to see you again soon. And as our time wraps up here now, I wish you all the very best as a strong finish to the school year. Please reach out if I can be of any assistance. Be well, finish well, and see you soon. Bye-bye all.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.